Welcome to Reading with Mo. Today we're going to be talking about a lot of books that I am excited for. They're going to be coming out in the next 3 months. So that would be for April, May, and June. Altogether, there are 21 different books that I want to share with you guys today. The first month we'll talk about will be April. There are 11 books coming out in the month of April that I'm interested in getting to. Hopefully you guys will at least hear about 1 or 2 books that you weren't aware of that you now want to add to your TBRs. All of these will be added to my TBR. I know I will not get to all 21 of these books, but it will be very interesting when I film a follow-up to this sometime in, I guess that would be July, and see how many of these I get to. I'm really excited to do that for the books that I read so far this year that are new releases. I actually have gotten to a lot of new releases this year, so I'm pretty proud of myself for that. I don't actually own any of the books that I'm going to be showing you guys today. I'll just pick them up most likely through my library. They're pretty good about getting new releases. I use the Libby app, so I can either get the ebook or the audiobook as long as I'm there like a few days. Well, when I say there, I mean on the app a few days before the book releases. I usually can get on the wait list early enough that I'm not having to wait months and months and months to read this new releases for free. But you know, if any publishers wanted to send me any of these books, I also would not be opposed to that as well. I'll probably only buy any of these books as physical copies if I do read it from my library first and decide that I enjoyed it enough that I want to purchase it. Anyway, that's enough of an intro there. Let's go ahead and get into the books that are coming out in April. Like I mentioned, there are 11 different ones that are coming out in April that I wanted to share with you guys. The first one is called Memphis by Tara Stringfellow. This one is following 3 generations of a Southern Black family and one daughter's discovery that she has the power to change her family's legacy. This one is a debut novel, and I have been seeing this book everywhere on Bookstagram, so that's kind of what piqued my interest. It starts off in the 1990s and it spans over the course of 70 years. I am definitely a sucker for multi-generational family stories, so I know that this one is definitely one I have to get to. Next, we have one that I'm a little bit iffy on, but I do want to get to it, and that is Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I loved Station 11 when I read that by her years ago. I read her other recent release, which was, now I'm completely blanking on the name of it, but I'll show you guys the picture of it right here. I can't remember the name of it right now. And I remember being a little bit disappointed, like I wasn't really wildly impressed with that book. So I'm going to give this author a third time and kind of see where I'm falling with this author, if Station 11 was just like a one-off thing or not. In this novel, I definitely am reading like the summary of, reading the synopsis of this novel, I am definitely getting feelings for Station 11 and the other book. She really does like to include perspectives from multiple different characters. This, I believe, is the first book that she has, at least that I've read, that where her characters, some of it is taking place off of Earth. So we're following 3 different characters, and I believe during 3 different timelines, which is also giving me very much Station 11 feelings. So the first one is Edwin, who is 18 years old. He is crossing the Atlantic by steamship, and in the Canadian wilderness, he hears the notes of a violin echoing in an airship terminal. 2 centuries later, we're following a famous writer on a book tour. She's traveling all over Earth, but her actual home is on the second moon colony. And then lastly, we have Gaspre Jacques Roberts, who is a detective in the Black Sky Night City, who is investigating an anomaly in the North American wilderness. I'm sure somehow all 3 of them are going to be interconnected somehow, and I am going to go into this book with no expectations to kind of just see what it's all about. Next, we have a nonfiction history book, and that is The Time Traveler's Guide to Regency Britain, a handbook for visitors to 1789 to 1830 by Ian Mortimer. I guess this author has done a series of different volumes on the Time Traveler's Guides, and in this specific one, he's looking at the British history period, specifically the Regency or Georgian England. I would definitely love to learn more about that period in history, especially because I feel like it will give a lot of context for different classic novels that I have read and that I want to get to. So this book sounds very interesting, and if I do like it, then I can check out some of his other time traveler's guides too. Next, we have A Woman of Endurance by Dalma Llanos Figueroa. This book, I love the cover on this one. That's what really stuck out to me first and made me have to look into this book. This book is set in 19th century Puerto Rican plantation society, and we're following Pola, who is a deeply spiritual woman. She's a spiritual African woman who's captured and sold for the purpose of breeding future slaves, so her babies are taken from her, and with that she starts losing her faith. and becomes very embittered and defensive. She doesn't allow this dehumanizing violence to completely destroy her, and it's described as a novel of, not a novel of defeat, but one of survival, regeneration, and reclamation of common humanity. Then we have Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. We're following our main character, Cheney Horowitz, who is a 20-something writer, and she feels very stuck in her career. All her friends like have these more high profile jobs and stuff, and she ends up getting hired to do this profile on a famous movie star. His name's Gabe Parker. He's her #1 celebrity crush and the guy who's going to be the newest James Bond. So that's what happened in the past. Then now we're following her 10 years later. After a brutal divorce and a healthy dose of therapy, she's back in Los Angeles as a successful writer with the career of her dreams. But no matter what, people are always still asking her about that original profile that she did about Gabe Parker. So she's actually asked to reunite with him for a second interview. She wants to say no, but she can't pretend that she's forgotten about the time that they spent together. Next, we have a mystery thriller book, and that is Insomnia by Sarah Pinborough. Now, you may remember this author from the book Behind Her Eyes, very controversial book, but it also had a Netflix show adaptation. I believe that came out last year. So she's coming out with a new novel. I don't really know too much about what it's about. I'll just read you the short little blurb here. It says, "In the dead of night, madness lies. Emma can't sleep. Check the windows. It's been like this since her big 4-0 started getting closer. Lock the doors. Her mother stopped sleeping just before her own 40th birthday. She went mad and did the unthinkable because of it. Look in on the children. Is that what's happening to Emma? Why can't she sleep?" I think that I loved the book. I'm not being spoiled for really what's going on in the book, but I'm getting a feel that it's going to be this kind of like weird, creepy book, and I hope that it's very good, because I attempted to read, I think, another book by Sarah Pinborough, and I remember I either didn't like it or didn't finish it. Next, we have Take My Hand by Dolan Perkins Valdez. This book takes place in Montgomery, Alabama in 1973. We're following Sybil Townsend, who she's just out of nursing school, and she decides that she's going to make a big difference. She has plans. She wants to make a big difference in her African American community, and she starts working at the Montgomery Family Planning Clinic. She wants to help women make their own choices for their lives and bodies. And then we also are following decades later her daughter, who, with her daughter grown and a long career in her wake, she's ready to retire and to leave the past behind, but there are people and stories that refuse to be forgotten. Next, we have a nonfiction historical book, and that is The Devil's Half Acre, The Untold Story of How One Woman Liberated the South's Most Notorious Slave Jail by Kristen Green. We're following the little-known story of young Mary Lumpkin, who was an enslaved woman who blazed a path of liberation for thousands. She was forced to have the children of a slave trader and live on his slave jail with him. It was called the Devil's Half Acre. When she inherited the jail after the death of her slaveholder, she transformed it into God's Half Acre, which is a school where Black men could fulfill their dreams. And it still exists today as Virginia Union University, one of America's first historical Black colleges and universities. I have definitely not heard of this story before, so I'm definitely interested in learning about it for myself. Then we have a book that's actually written by Janelle Monáe, which you guys may know her, that she is a musician. So I was definitely interested to see that she's coming out with a book, and it's actually a science fiction book. It's called The Memory Librarian and Other Stories of Dirty Computer by Janelle Monáe. So Janelle Monáe and a group of collaborating creators have written a collection of interwoven tales comprising the bold vision and powerful themes that have made Monáe such a compelling and celebrated storyteller. So Dirty Computer introduced a world in which thoughts as a means of self-conception could be controlled or erased by a select few. And whether human, AI, or other, your life and sentience was dictated by those who had convinced themselves they had the right to decide your fate. That was until Jane 57821 decided to remember and break free. So it's kind of hard to tell with this book if it's more like a short story collection or like interconnected stories or a novel or anything. I think until I actually like read the book itself, I won't know for sure. Next, we have In the Face of the Sun by Denny S. Bryce. This book takes place in 1928 in Los Angeles. We're following the newly built Hotel Somerville, which is the hotspot for the city's glittering African-American elite. We're following Daisy Washington. She's an up-and-coming journalist. She is anonymously chronicling fierce activism and behind-the-scenes Hollywood scandals. The second timeline is taking place in Chicago in 1968, and it's you can tell it's related because we're actually following Frankie Saunders, who's fleeing across America from her abusive husband, and her rescuer is her aunt, Daisy, the one who was the journalist, like about 40 years later, and I guess they each have their own secrets and are hiding things from their own past. That sounds like a very interesting book, and hopefully I can get to that one too. And we have, lastly, for the books that are coming out in the month of April, The Wild Girls by Phoebe Morgan. This one is a mystery thriller. We're following this group of girls who are called the Wild Girls. They're Grace, Felicity, Alice, and Hannah. Felicity invites all of them on the weekend of a lifetime. They're doing a big birthday bash in Botswana. It will be a chance for them to rekindle their friendship, which I guess exploded in one horrible night years ago. Soon after they arrive at this luxury safari lodge, uneasiness starts spreading. There's no sign of the party that was promised. There's no phone signal, and they're on their own, and from there everything just keeps going wrong. This one is described as a classic locked room mystery, and I'm definitely down for that. There are 5 books coming out in the month of May that I'm interested in. The first one is a horror book, actually, and it's called Just Like Mother by Anne Heltzel. This one is described as a modern gothic novel. So the last time Maeve saw her cousin was the night that she escaped the cult that they were raised in. And then for the past 2 decades, Maeve has worked to build a normal life in New York City, where she's trying to keep everything and everyone at a distance from her past. When a friend from her past reappears, she ends up spending time at this remote Catskills estate. She spends more time in this estate than in her own apartment. The more Maeve is immersing herself in her friend Andrea's world, the more disconnected she is becoming to her real life. And with that increasing attachment, it's triggering memories that she's tried to bury. But confronting the terrors of her childhood may be the only way to transcend the nightmares still to come. So I don't really know exactly why this book is a horror book, but it does give me very strong gothic novel vibes. Next we have The Colony by Audrey McGee. So in this book, it takes place in 1979 on this small island off the west coast of Ireland. So there's a lot of violence and stuff going on at the time. We're following 2 different outsiders who are traveling to this island. One is an English painter, the other one is a Frenchman. They each are going there for their own personal reasons, but also we're following the people who are living on this island who have their own expectations too. This is described as a portrait of character and place, a stirring investigation into yearning to find one's own way, and an unflinching political critique of the long seething cost of imperialism. Next we have We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies, and this one's by Tsering Yangzom Lama. This one is recommended for people who have read We Need New Names and Pachinko, which I did read both of those and have liked them. This is a debut novel about a Tibetan family's journey through exile. We're following Lama and her younger sister Tenki as they're arriving at a refugee camp in 1959 following China's invasion of Tibet. So they're at a refugee camp on the border of Nepal. They survived the dangerous journey across the Himalayas, but their parents didn't. This book is told through the lives of 4 people over 50 years. This definitely sounds like the type of thing I'd be interested in. This novel is bringing forward the little-known world of Tibetan exiles, which is definitely something I don't really know much about, so I hope that through this book I will be able to educate myself a little bit more on their experiences. And I believe this book, if I remember right, was one of the books that's nominated for the Women's Literature Prize, but I'll have to double check that. I could be wrong. Next we have City of Orange by David Yoon. This one is a science fiction novel. I have read the other book that David Yoon came out with before, Frankly in Love, and that one I remember was like a young adult contemporary novel, I think. In this book, I don't think it's young adult. I think this is an adult novel now, and we're following a man who can't remember his own name. He wakes up in this apocalyptic landscape. He is injured and alone. He has vague memories of life before, but he doesn't really know how he got to be in his current situation. He has to learn how to survive. Then he encounters a boy and he realizes nothing is what he thought it was, either in the past that he thought he knew or the present. And lastly, for the books coming out in May, we have Night Crawling by Layla Motley. This book is a debut novel, and we are following Kiara and her brother, who are barely scraping by in a squalid East Oakland apartment complex optimistically called the Regal High. This is a debut novel following a young Black woman who walks the streets of Oakland and stumbles headlong into the failure of its justice system. And then lastly, we have the books that are coming out in the month of June. We have 5 left to go over. The first one is Last Summer on State Street by Toya Wolf. This one's described as for fans of Jacqueline Woodson and Britt Bennett. This one is also a debut novel, and it's a coming-of-age novel about friendship, community, and resilience, and it's set in the housing projects of Chicago during one life-changing summer. We're following Fifi, who is living with her mother and older teenage brother. It's the summer of 1999, and the high-rise that they live in is next in line to be torn down by the Chicago Housing Authority. We're following her and a group of 3 other friends and watching them as their neighborhood is beginning to fall down around them, and also at the same time their friendships and the structures of their families. Fifi is looking back on everything that happened over that summer decades later, and she's trying to make sense of the grief and bonds that still haunt her. I'm noticing a lot of these books that I'm interested in reading are actually debut novels, so that's really exciting to see authors and experience them when they don't really have much work out, and then see if I want to continue to follow them as they release more books in the future. Next we have One's Company by Ashley Hudson. This one is described as for readers of Otessa Moshfegh and Mona Awad. I haven't read Mona Awad yet. I know I am behind, but eventually I will get to reading some of her stuff. This book is a debut novel as well, and it's chronicling one woman's escape into a world of obsessive imagination. We're following Bonnie Lincoln, who just wants to come home from work, shut out the voice that reminds her of some devastating losses, and unwind in front of the nostalgic golden glow of her favorite TV show, Three's Company. When she ends up winning the lottery, she plans this drastic move to an isolated mountain retreat where she can recreate the iconic apartment set of Three's Company and slip into the lives of its main characters. Her best friend is trying to drag her back to real life, but she's determined to live in this world and basically immerse herself in the ultimate binge watch. So this sounds like very interesting. I definitely need to see what's going on there. Then we have a very highly anticipated book I know for a lot of people is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I have read all of Riley Sager's books, and I'm definitely going to be reading this one for sure. So in this mystery thriller book, we're following Casey Fletcher, who is a recently widowed actress, and she is escaping to her family's lake house in Vermont. While she's there, she happens to see, or passes the time, watching Tom and Catherine Royce, who are the glamorous couple who live in the house across the lake. One day, she actually ends up saving the wife from drowning, and that kind of strikes up a friendship with them. But then it becomes clear that their marriage isn't perfect, and then when the wife ends up vanishing, Casey is obsessed with finding out what actually happened to her. I'm hoping that I really enjoy this mystery thriller. I have enjoyed Riley Sager's books in the past, so I do hope that this one doesn't let me down. Next, we have Elsewhere by Alexis Scheidekin. I hope I said that right. In this book, we're following Vera, who grows up in this small, removed, isolated town in the mountains where it seems like some mothers vanish from their families. And when she was a young girl, when her own mother went, she was on the cusp of adulthood herself. So as her peers are beginning to get married and become mothers, they're starting to speculate about who's going to be the first to go. Eventually, with Vera becoming a mother herself and being faced with the question, will she be able to stay and mother her beloved child, or will she go? I'm very interested to see if this is supposed to be like metaphorical, like do the moms choose to go, or is it something more that's happening that they have no choice in leaving, which I'm kind of thinking is that because this book is categorized as a fantasy novel. Then lastly, we are going to end with a mystery thriller, and that is One of the Girls by Lucy Clark. This one, we're following what's supposed to be a perfect weekend getaway. We have 6 very different women who travel to a Greek island for a bachelorette trip to celebrate Lexi's upcoming wedding. Dangerous undercurrents are running beneath the sunset swims and midnight cocktails because each one of the women is hiding a secret. Someone is determined to make sure that Lexi's marriage never happens and that one of them doesn't leave the island alive. This one's described as a gripping, twisty, and full of sun-soaked suspense. I am hoping that this one is just very fun and just a very fun, enjoyable mystery. Obviously, there's not too many suspects as we're following the 6 different women that are going to this island, but I'm hoping it's good. I feel like I've read another Lucy Clark book, but now I can't remember what it was. Actually, I think I lied because looking into it, none of her books that have been published look familiar, so this will be my first book that I will have read by Lucy Clark. So those are all 21 books that I am going to be trying to attempt to get to sometime over the next few months. I think I will definitely make it through a good chunk of these. Let me know if there's any of these books that you guys are trying to get to too, and we can talk about it in the comments below. Let me know also if there's any other books I haven't mentioned that are coming out in the next few months that you're interested in. And that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye!